What is going on, Walk-ins Welcome family? Nick and Michael here, rocking another episode for you, dropping on a Wednesday as usual, but we are here to help you scale your clinic. We want to help you get more patients, deliver better care, get repeat visits, and scale. That's what we're all about. Michael, what's up, my friend? How are you today?
What's happening? And I'll keep repeating myself for a minute. This is our month of interviews, and we have another one coming on today, which is awesome. It's really cool. We're going to talk shop in the marketing world because the person that we have on today, she has been deep in the marketing world for urgent cares for a long time. And then she made a switch, but we get to chat about it. But so who we have today? So we have Alyssa, I'm going to try to say it right, Alsheimer.
You got it.
Okay, Alyssa Alsheimer. She's currently at Wellframe, which is part of HealthEdge. And what does Wellframe do? Well, okay, let me say this right. She's part of marketing at Wellframe, where she helps health plans better market to their members. That's a lot of H's in there, so it took me a second. But Alyssa, thanks for coming on. And I know Nick's got that famous question he's got to ask.
Yeah, I always want you to say hi to the Walk-ins Welcome family and tell us one thing about you that nobody else knows.
Hi, everyone, and thanks to y'all for having me. One thing that you guys don't know about me is that I am an internationally ranked competitive pinball player, and this past weekend came in 5th in a tournament.
All right, I'm gonna give you a digital high five. There.
Yeah, that's good.
Congratulations. There's a really I honestly, I wish I had asked where you're from. I didn't put that. I think it's like Maryland or something like that.
I'm in Boston, close.
Boston, Mass. Okay, Massachusetts. So if you ever find your way down here, I'm friends with a place called Hooligans, and Hooligans has wall-to-wall pinball machines, and they carry tournaments and all that kind of stuff. Congratulations on coming in 5th. Pinball is fun.
That's really cool, actually.
Yes.
Do you have a pinball machine at home?
I have 4 pinball machines in my basement.
I've got a better question. Have you ever played full contact pinball?
We have played Trash Talker pinball, where
I like that even
Trash Talker pinball,
which with enough beverages probably could turn into full contact real quick. You said the wrong thing.
Pretty much.
All right,
cool.
I want to talk shop today, Michael. You had brought Alyssa to the table because of her background in urgent care, and we want to talk Wellframe. That's going to be a part of our conversation today. I can't wait to tell you guys about that, or at least have Alyssa do that. But to give us a brief, as long as you want, background on your urgent care experience, as much or as little as you want to share.
Absolutely. So prior to joining Wellframe, I was an ad industry veteran, worked at several ad agencies, including iProspect, which is part of the Dentsu Aegis network. And we ran digital marketing for a national urgent care brand. So we managed their paid search, their paid social, and their SEO, all with the goal of driving patients to their clinics. We did a highly localized strategy, the likes of which I have never seen, in terms of where we geofenced and who you saw and what location came up for you. And we also did a lot of their branding work as well, because a strong brand is really important in the urgent care business. People need to trust you, especially in that moment of need. So I was really excited to come on the podcast today and talk about that.
I love that so much. And I love that you've brought in branding, building trust, especially because urgent care struggles so much in brand loyalty. So I want to start just with the branding. How do you build a brand of trust in a space that doesn't have brand loyalty?
I'm about to say, because I think urgent care industry is one of the toughest industries to build brand loyalty, because people just simply aren't, right? Like they just look for the red letters and say that's nearby and it's convenient, and they have pretty good reviews, and that's about as far as some of them will take it. But yeah, let's talk branding. What was the transformation? What were the things? What were the results from the branding? What did y'all do?
Yeah, so from a branding perspective, what we really wanted to do was identify the things that for this chain helped them stand out from the rest of urgent cares. Because you're right, it's my throat is sore. I need to see someone. Oh, I see a cross nearby. Let me just go in there. In our scenario, and this is pre-pandemic time, so before this was really important to anyone, it was about cleanliness, it was about time to care, and it was about this personalized approach. So what we did is, in addition to all of the performance campaigns that we had running, the very much, I'm Googling, I need the good reviews for the place that I need an appointment now, we were running evergreen campaigns that highlighted those key differentiators and went back to content on their website. And I think for a lot of urgent care brands, content is something that's like easy to push off, because it's like, my website needs to focus on a good appointment booker and a good location search. But really having content there So if someone is wondering about getting a flu shot or is wondering about getting a strep test, you're surfacing in those search results and you're surfacing in those paid social ads. That builds that trust and that builds those touch points. So when someone is in a moment of need, that brand is resonating. So it's very hard to measure. You can't just go and say, all right, we increased brand from 2 to 6.
Brand equity is a very difficult thing to determine sometimes.
Right. It is. So in this scenario, the way we measured that was through click-through rate on all of our campaigns. For all of the ads that we were showing, were more people clicking on them, and could we credit that somewhat to the brand? I worked on another healthcare campaign, not specifically in urgent care, but a related healthcare company, where we actually did a digital holdout test. So if you're an urgent care company that has maybe locations in 2 states, you can try running brand in one state and not in the other, and then compare those front-end metrics. Are you getting more site visits? Are you getting more organic clicks? Are you getting a higher click-through rate on your ads? That's really the best way to measure the impact of brand, is looking at the downstream impacts that it has on your other marketing initiatives.
It's interesting. So we work with a couple of large national brands, and the branding makes a difference on the conversion costs. Like it's kind of sad to say, it's just easier to do better when there's a recognized, respected brand that you're working with, and the people just respond because they see it like, oh, I know what that is. And they kind of identify with it. Cause I'm sure you've seen this plenty of times. People don't look when they click. They just tap the first thing they see and assume it's the right thing. And then they don't even pay attention till they're talking to somebody and they realize, oh wait, you're not what I thought you were, but okay.
So Alyssa, let's do a quick brand experiment so that I can help our audience understand brand. It's been my experience that brand is what other people think of you. Okay.
Sure.
So what do you think of when I say Chick-fil-A?
Tasty sandwiches and waffle fries, which I am not a fan of.
Okay. All right. So you have your own experience brand. All right. What do you think of when you think of Coca-Cola?
Very sugary drinks.
Okay. And what do you think of when you think of Walmart?
Everything you could possibly want to buy and more.
What do you think of when you think of American Family Care?
Ooh. We actually have one nearby. Fast appointments and locally oriented.
So the only point I wanted to make with all of this is every one of these huge brands, including American Family Care, have spent a massive amount of time to get you to think something. Yeah. And I wonder if they were putting into their boardroom, I want people to not like our waffle fries.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Right? Or if I wonder, like, the only perception is sugary drink.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's real. Like, cause I think because when you said Chick-fil-A, my default was consistent fast service. Mm-hmm. Like it's like when you get into that line, it feels like an amusement park ride where you're just constantly moving through the line, like you're getting ready on the roller coaster.
When I think Walmart, I think vampires after 10 p.m. Like, it's just, it's like everybody has. That's the whole point I was trying to make, though, Alyssa. And you would have significantly more experience than even Michael and I have in this space, and that is, you can do only so much to influence your brand.
Yeah.
At some point, you need to find out what other people think about your brand.
Yeah.
Right.
And be realistic about it too. Like, you have to be accepting that your brand isn't perfect and it's got issues, and then, how people perceive it will always be different from what you're hoping they do. Cause like, it's just part of the game you play. Right. But at the same time, a brand is much more than just a logo. Cause a lot of people think a brand is just a logo, and it's so much more. There's a whole.
It really is. And
I
think you make a good point about what do people say in boardrooms that they want people to think about them versus perception is reality. What do they perceive that to be? Yeah. And I find it particularly in healthcare, because I think it's so insular and we're very focused on delivering good care. We end up talking about ourselves within our 4 walls in ways that a normal person never, ever would. And it's so important to get outside of that and really understand what people are thinking about, whether you do a survey or a focus group, or even what's great about urgent care locations is there are physical locations. You can actually understand what people perceive of you based on their physical experience. And that's super powerful.
Dr. William Attaway was just recently on the podcast, and he said that businesses can't see the picture because they're inside the frame.
Exactly.
They're inside the frame. So I'm going to ask you, how do you get outside of the frame?
I will say social media is an incredibly powerful tool for doing that. We live in a world where we actually have so much access to information now that we wouldn't have had access to before. You talked about reviews before as well. I think when you're close to a business, whether you're an owner or you're managing marketing, it can be tough to sometimes see. But if you're not looking at social media, if you're not looking at the reviews, I think you're missing out on a big part of that feedback. I also do think it's important to get a surveying mechanism set up so you can get that feedback from your patients. You can use something really easy like a SurveyMonkey or a Qualtrics to kind of deploy those at a pretty low cost. But with that, it's really important to do so consistently. You can't just send out a survey once to all of your patients and say, all right, at this moment in time, this was reality and this will be reality forevermore. You need to be able to get that historical data. So as you're doing more with the brand or as you're putting more into the market, you can see how results evolve over time.
Is this something that when you were an ad buyer or a media buyer, even at the agency level, is this something that you automated inside of the clinics?
Not necessarily on the urgent care front, but I actually used to stand up social media listening campaigns at scale for large organizations, including a large airline that had a particularly high volume of social media posts about them. And there are tools that can allow you to do that.
just Spirit.
Better than Spirit, but but definitely.
Was it really?
Yeah, it was not Spirit Airlines.
Okay. I thought you said it was. I'm like, yes, nailed it.
A bit of a better reputation, but when you think about an airline, so if you think about exacerbating a problem, if you're doing social media listening for an airline, which has more comments about it than anyone could possibly have in probably any other industry, being able to use AI to analyze the sentiment of those messages, being able to leverage tools and technology that help you group those messages, being able to use tools that help you respond at scale, that's definitely something that we've done. And there are a lot of tools out there that can help with that. AI has come a really long way in being able to do kind of natural language processing. So understanding sarcasm, understanding if something is actually negative or positive and what response you need to make.
We just recently put together an ad campaign, multiple videos long, where you were talking about how it can understand things that even we don't understand. So we had it write advertising in the voice of Generation Z, so Gen Z. And it's using words like skibbity and I don't even know what they mean. If you have kids, you're over here scratching your head going, I don't know what that means, but I hear it every day.
Yeah, exactly. That's real.
But now we're saying, okay, here's what I want to say now translated into Gen Z. And then I'm going to have an old dude deliver it because all the parents are going to be like, I don't know what he said, but I'm buying from him, because he understands me. I love how you're using AI. One of the things that you brought up very, very early in the episode was geofencing. We get so many questions, so many inquiries about geofencing. And I want to hear from your perspective. One, what's the best case use for it? Two, what are you delivering it through if you can share that?
Sure.
And three, when do you not use it?
Yeah. And I think important to note that a lot of these geofence campaigns were set up pre-pandemic. So technology has evolved since then, but
for sure.
Geofencing, I think, performs best in performance media channels. I don't think geofencing a banner or video advertising campaign is super effective because when you're building brand, you want to cast a bit of a wider net. Now, as you move down the funnel and you're driving that point of conversion, it's important to be as specific as possible. So, for example, New York City. If anyone's ever been to New York is segmented into these itty-bitty neighborhoods and people don't leave them. If you work in Midtown and you live in Greenpoint, Brooklyn, you work in Midtown and you take the train home to Greenpoint, Brooklyn, and you really don't stop in between there. So specifically for an urgent care, I need to know where you work and I need to know where you live. And I need to know that if you're at work and you start feeling unwell, if you search for urgent care near me, my ad for our Midtown location better show up over my ad for Soho or for Greenpoint or for a different location because people are not willing to walk outside of that zone. So we delivered both our paid search and our paid social campaigns at a zip code and even narrower level. And we just did that natively within the engine. So within Google, within Facebook, you can actually put in those parameters for how much you want to target. So I find those to be the most effective channels to be geofencing. And I think it really helps because those channels will update the location they're showing based on where a user's mobile device is, as opposed to other tools that may do it based on your IP address or your past known location. And like I said, people work in a different place where they live. And for urgent care specifically, you need to make sure you're right on top of whatever location they're currently at.
Yeah, and we find specifically in Google Ads, making sure you tick on located in and not interested in, because that always creates little fluctuations there. But yeah, the zip code's a real thing, especially in because in those type of cities, there's so many zip codes already in there. So it gets micro-focused really fast. Because, from our standpoint, if you're not in a big city where you're just in a normal suburbs, right? You can pick out like a 1 or 2 mile radius and typically okay. But yeah, in your scenario there, there may be 25 urgent cares within half a mile every which way. So you have to be careful that you're not wasting dollars in the wrong spot.
We even went as far as to do an analysis and working with each of the locations to understand where their patients were coming from, to understand if someone was more or less likely to walk north, south, east, or west coming out of their building. Because to your point, we might have a location 5 blocks to the east and we might have a location 5 blocks to the north, but we want to know which out of those locations we should be pushing to a given patient at a given time.
I'm fascinated at how the approach for marketing changes based on density of the city or dynamics of a city. We of course study this, but we haven't had the good fortune yet to just play deep in New York just yet. I hope that's a city we'll get to pick up at some point.
Well, we have Huntington coming, but not like
we're waiting on
them.
So point being though is just that approach. Even though I know it, I've never really heard it articulated that way. And you have Atlantas and you have Chicago's and you have LA's that are even listening right now. And then here we are in little Birmingham, Alabama. We call it the strikingly mediocre skyline of Birmingham, Alabama with its 7 buildings. But
yeah, you get
a different approach, right?
You can see the whole skyline of Birmingham in one frame.
Yeah, it makes it easy for photographs.
It does.
That's right. It does.
Now we have a photo in our office I took of the one frame.
Don't get me wrong. We love Birmingham. That's not the point. All right. So I like to ask this question to people in the marketing space only. What is your favorite marketing tool?
What is my favorite marketing tool? That is so hard to answer. But I will say that the channel that I always try to have a presence on when and where I can, and I have been a fan of this channel for a long, long time, I love digital audio. And at my last role, I was known as the digital audio queen. I was the person in every pitch meeting who was like, how do we get podcast ads in here? How do we get satellite radio? How do we get Pandora? I think it's becoming saturated now, but for a long, long time, we were just getting into being able to programmatically buy in digital audio, and you had things like host reads, and there was a lot that you could do at a much lower cost. And so for me, that was kind of like the Wild West of media for the longest time.
I love it. I cut my teeth in traditional radio. So we did talk, and then we did Christian radio. So it was just niche radio would be the best way to say it. And it's amazing how effective that can be when you have a niche audience. And boy, have podcasts been able to develop a niche audience.
Oh, it's wild.
The programmatic display that you talk about, being able to deliver those audience to the right audience at the right time, in the right way, with the right voice, all the different things you can do with it.
It
Voice
checks the
flexion.
boxes for everything you want to do with marketing.
Right.
And that's why I love it. I just think it's a really creative medium, and a lot of other mediums for advertising have just gotten pretty stale. And this one's pretty exciting.
Well, and obviously our podcast originated from Spotify, and it goes to Apple Podcasts and all the places. And I like how Spotify now has self commercialing, where you just go to their platform and just submit something, and then they record it real quick for you and send it right back, and there's your ad. But then for me personally, it's funny because Spotify is convinced I speak Spanish, and it will just give me Spanish ads all day.
I was just going to say that too. My podcast app also thinks I do speak Spanish, but my podcast app thinks that's my native language, so I get the majority of my ads also.
I don't speak Spanish at all.
Facebook thinks I'm an African-American woman.
You can look that up for any of your listeners within Facebook, Twitter, Google. You can look up what these platforms have assumed that you.
And I'm like, I don't know how you came up with that, but I'm not offended.
No, it's all good.
I was like, if that's what you want to show me, let's go.
Yeah, exactly.
Google for the longest time thought I was a 45-year-old guy who was very interested in baseball. The latter part is not wrong, but the first two parts are.
I like that.
I would be the 45-year-old guy, but I'm more into football than baseball.
That checks
Look,
out.
I've had a blast talking about the marketing piece of this. I would love to continue to go down this rabbit hole, but I don't want to miss an opportunity to talk about Wellframe.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So give us an explanation of Wellframe, what it is that you specifically do there, in addition to what it does for your clients.
Absolutely. So Wellframe is, again, part of HealthEdge. We are a digital care management platform. So say you have you're a health plan member, and let's say you have a surgery and you're discharged from the hospital. Your health plan will typically assign you a care manager, typically a nurse, sometimes a non-clinical person, who will call you and say, hey, just so you got discharged from the hospital, do you have questions about your medication? Do you need anything? Do you need help making a follow-up? And I don't know about you all, but I can't remember the last time I answered a phone call from an unknown number. So what we do is we digitize care management. So you can actually download an app. You can chat with your care manager, which is much more what you want to do when, say, you're healing from an injury or dealing with an illness. There's content that you can consume on demand. There are care programs you can be enrolled in. So essentially, we work to digitize that function of health plans and kind of bring it into the modern era. In terms of my role at Wellframe, I oversee our member marketing team. So we work with health plans to get their members onto the platform. And it's very similar to what we were talking about before in terms of branding, in terms of conversion. You all probably had never heard of care management before this conversation. We've done surveys that show half of Americans don't know what a care manager is. But in your moment of need, if someone were to email you or send you a text message that says, hey, there's this app that can help you manage your medications or answer your questions and help you feel better faster, you would absolutely download it. But the problem for health plans is kind of closing that gap and getting to members at the right place at the right time. So my team works with them to identify the channels, the messages, the creative that will resonate most with those members and get the message in front of them.
How are you able to bridge the gap with trust? I know my dad, who is in his mid to late 70s at this point, isn't giving any information online. And I buy like protection for my Social Security. So I'll put whatever I want out there because they'll cover me for it.
But then you'll purchase something off TikTok Shop.
I know, right? Well, that's what I'm just saying.
Hey, they have very good sales on TikTok Shop.
They do have good sales.
I was going to say.
Not going to lie. Or Teamu's not that bad half the time.
Yeah, that's right. You get to spin the little wheel. But
yeah.
But anyway, you know, I think part of that is you have to bridge a trust gap because you have to put personal information out there, specifically HIPAA information. How are y'all able to bridge that gap? What kind of education are you doing on this?
So I think it's a threefold approach. I think the first is to build that trust through a multi-touch journey. I think when companies ask members, patients, consumers to do something, they typically send one letter, one email, one phone call, and call it a day. No one's ever converted off that. Not no one, but very few people convert off that. And you need to kind of convince them that they should trust you. So deliver content that shows we hear you, we see you, we've dealt with members who have similar problems. So the email journeys that my team deploys have 6 emails in them, and they each kind of move you down the funnel and give you more and more proof points about why this will help you. I think the second piece is being what I call personalized but not creepy. It's okay that we know that maybe you have a chronic condition or you recently had a hospital stay, but I should not be emailing you and saying, hey, bummer about the broken leg. Now that you're home and you're on these 4 medications.
You should do a Gen Z version of it. Just take one of your copies and turn it into Gen Z.
I will have to run that through AI because I do not speak Gen Z. But
you have to run that through HR too.
The only word I know is Riz, and I can just keep saying that over and over. So those are 2 really important parts of it. But I think the third piece of it is just being really targeted and really pragmatic with your approach and reaching out to the members that you know need you the most and asking those members to give you the least information you need to get the job done. So like you mentioned your Social Security number. I don't need your Social Security number to provide you with better care.
Sure.
I do need your name and your email address so I can email you later. So finding that ground of being really targeted and really relevant, but also just being understanding that people are skeptical about sharing their information these days. So maybe asking them just to share the bare minimum of what you need.
You know, I wonder, so we talk a lot on this podcast about the importance of a front desk person.
Yep.
So I'm curious from your viewpoint, is the provider creating enough education about what's going to be communicating with them once they exit the hospital or whatever? Does that increase the conversion, or because they don't feel as blindsided? Because I even got a text a week or two ago from one of the hospitals I've been to for an MRI, and they said, I didn't click on it because this is creepy. It literally said, "Hey, you need to set a new appointment with Brookwood, whatever. Click here." I'm like, no, I'm not clicking there.
Well, and there's so many spam messages nowadays. You can't trust anything that you're sent. So to answer your question, yes, some health plans actually have care managers or nurses who are in the hospital. So when folks are getting discharged, they're being given a handout or being able to scan a QR code that tells them about Wellframe. And we see that has a significant increase in conversion rate because that's a face-to-face conversation that you've had with someone. We also haven't abandoned telephonic outreach entirely. Some people feel more comfortable downloading something or doing something digitally after talking to a person. We also find with some members that may be less digitally savvy, they need someone to talk them through how to download an app, how to register. So I think it's about meeting members where they are and finding that level of comfort and just providing that face wherever you can.
So it's funny that you say that. I was listening to a fascinating AI software. It's called air.ai. And I think at this point, I think the government shut it down at this point because they just didn't like it. But that's what government
very fascinating.
But it sounded like a real human being having a real conversation about, I don't know if you've seen the Apple Vision goggles, you know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
I swear I'm going somewhere with this. But the conversation kind of leads into what you're talking about is I want to talk to somebody before I start giving information, right? And so this thing's saying, hey, I saw where you inquired about our product. What kept you from moving forward with us? And they're like, the price. And, they came up with something. And he said, well, let me ask you this. If I could help you finance that over the next 2 years, would that make it easier for you to get into this? Because it sounds like you want it. You just don't want to pay all this up front. This is the AI talking, right? Sounding like me right now. And they're like, yeah, absolutely. Well, I tell you what, can I shoot you a link real quick? And you could actually just sign up for it right there if you want to. Yeah, that sounds great. Let me just confirm. This is your phone number that I can send it to. Yep. Check real quick. Make sure you got my text message. This is AI talking the whole time. But I'm just thinking, I wonder if there's going to be application based on what you were talking about in the future where somebody's having a conversation or even an AI having a conversation with this person talking about their healthcare. And then at the point of comfort, hey, let me text you a link where you can just get signed up for this right now.
Yep. Yeah. And that already exists. There's AI nurses that are being tested, which I do think maybe a little bit further down. But I do think that there's a role for AI in terms of being able to engage people at scale, and certainly something that we're exploring. There's a finite number of people that a human can call or engage with every day. So if you can complement that with AI and still deliver a high standard of care, you should definitely look at it. I do think outside the healthcare industry, but worth a Google, Air Canada had a chat bot that was very similar to what you were talking about, but misinterpreted one of its policies and basically told a guy he could book a bereavement flight and it would get credited back to him when it couldn't. And Air Canada actually tried to testify in court that they were not responsible for the actions of its chatbot.
I've seen. Yeah, there was even when I think it was last year when AI chatbots were coming on strong. They had turned one on for like a Ford dealership, and the person convinced the AI chat to sell the car to him for $1 or for whatever, and it accepted it, and it started like getting ready to give, and then they had to screenshot it and step and shut it down.
I mean, we had an AI get sassy on a Google review.
Yeah, we did. We that was fantastic. So one of our softwares that hooks into reviews, it had an AI feature that decided to turn itself on. We didn't turn it on, just turned itself on. And it started responding to one of our urgent care's Google reviews, and it got sassy real fast. And so one of you say it best.
Oh, it was fantastic. Because let's face it, Richard, you just don't want to pay your bill.
Yeah, that was the reply to the review.
I was like, "There's no way." That's our clients called us. They're like, "Did you post this?" I'm like, "There's no way.
No, we don't.
We would never do that.
We could, but we can't."
Well, I had to call that client myself and be like, "Hey, see what happened."
AI took over for a second.
Decided that this person
those AI features do love to turn themselves on. I remember even a few years ago, there were certain ad formats that would just turn themselves on in terms of dynamically populating creative.
Oh yeah,
that happens at Facebook all the time.
Yeah, when you work in healthcare, and I worked in pharmaceutical marketing, we can't just have pieces of our ads be pulled together. There's,
right.
The FTC is going to have something to say
That's
about
right.
that.
We literally had a Facebook ad campaign 3 or 4 months ago. There was a new feature in Facebook ads. There's a tiny checkbox, and it was like ad enhancements. And we didn't even realize it was on.
Well, you have to check it to get it to turn it off.
Yeah, it's automatically on. You check it to turn off, and it would literally just, because it's through our client. The client's like, why are we seeing ads with like a snake emoji and all this stuff? Right, we didn't do that.
We didn't do that. I promise.
And basically, it said that it was reading their profiles and trying to determine what would relate to them, and just injecting stuff on the fly. It made a quick mess.
Every AI I've ever worked with is so emoji happy. It is.
Totally it does,
and it loves magic.
I can pick an AI ad out just because of the emojis it uses. I was like, nobody would have ever thought to use that emoji.
Or using a word that's like over 10 letters long.
No one uses the rocket emoji any more than an AI does.
Right. There's a really cool AI that we use called ZimWriter, and you can go in and tell it to nuke AI words, and it just won't use them. And I like that.
Yeah, that was a nice little feature.
We love AI around here. We use it all the time, but we use it not as the front facing. We use it to generate ideas and stuff like that.
It's our assistant.
I've got 10 ideas. So let me expand on these, that kind of thing. Yeah. But just going back to Wellframe, if somebody that's listening to the podcast wanted to learn more about Wellframe, obviously they can go to wellframe.com, but what is the benefit of reaching out to you directly?
I mean, reaching out to me directly, you would definitely get, if you're not a health plan, you get the kind of undiluted healthcare side of things. And I love joining you guys to talk about marketing. I would love to jam about healthcare marketing and member engagement with anyone that wants to talk about it.
And that to me is the bridge there of the gap. It's one thing to just go to Wellframe. It's something entirely different for somebody who has been in the urgent care space for as long as you have and done what you've done with one of the biggest urgent cares out there. You're going to be able to talk and understand at that level. And this is going to be a good benefit to the listeners to be able to come in and have that conversation with you. So we'll drop a link in the show notes. I did want to ask something because it came up on a call that wasn't here on the podcast, but it makes me want to ask this question. And if this hasn't been an experience for you, then this could just be dead in the water as we stand. But you've used urgent care before, right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Just briefly describe a good experience that you had. I just want to pique ideas with our listeners on what a good experience looks like for other people.
Yeah. From a personal perspective, I think my best experiences with urgent cares are fast, where I know once I get there how quickly I'm going to be seen. I was a very frequent flyer at some urgent cares when I lived in Dallas. It was just easier than going to see my PCP. So understanding what those wait times looked like, I think one of them I went to even had it on their website. Having a very clear course of treatment laid out, having the ability to have any testing I need done on premises and not having to go chase down the x-ray, the blood test and all of that. And then the follow-up afterwards. I think when you go to an urgent care, it's typically for something that you're not used to seeing, which is why you go to an urgent care to get seen. So having that follow-up is really helpful.
I love it. Yep. Those are the experiences as an urgent care you guys get to provide for us all day, every day, folks. And I appreciate it. Alyssa Alsheimer with us today. So glad to have you on the podcast.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Joining us. We hope to have you on again here in the future. Thank you. I appreciate you coming on with us. Any parting words before we sign off?
You can find a list of upcoming pinball tournaments and places to visit at
there you go.
Best sign-off strategy ever. Yeah. Go play pinball, break a finger, go to an urgent care, and the experience on the follow-up will be with Alyssa. That'll be awesome.
There you go.
There have been many pinball injuries. I will have you know, it can be a tough activity. Thanks,
Note to self, pinball injuries, bring that up on the next podcast episode with Alyssa.
And on that, thank you guys for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Have a good one. See ya.